Tennessee WildCast is live on the air with the latest on hunting, fishing, boating, and all things outdoors. Make welcome your host, drummer, and outdoor expert novice, Jason Harmon.
And hello, everybody. Welcome to this edition of Tennessee WildCast. I'm Jason Harmon, and we are on location here in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. And I got Mr. Matt Cameron as my co-host today. How you doing, Matt?
Very well. Yourself?
Doing great, doing great. This is his neck of the woods. He's the Reaching For or info specialist, and make sure everybody knows what's going on in his area. And we appreciate him co-hosting with us today. And we're going to do more shows in your area.
Glad to be here. I can be your co-pilot anytime.
Yeah. We got Mr. David Sexton with us today. He's an officer here in Sevier County. He's a sergeant, actually.
That is correct.
Oversees a few counties. And then Mr. Dan Gibbs, he's our black bear coordinator for the state. So also an officer. But we appreciate Dan and David for being with us today, and Matt for co-hosting. We're going to be talking about bears in Gatlinburg. We're on location. It's a wet day, so we'll deal with that. Luckily, we're in the drive for the show, but hope you're tuning in on Facebook and hope you enjoyed the show today. But some of the things we're going to cover is dealing with black bears, coexisting with black bears, just everything in Gatlinburg. So let's kick it off with let's mention Bear Wise. Bear Wise is a program that we've got started. I guess it's kind of
he's the brainchild of it, right?
Yeah,
here with us today.
It was Dan's idea, I believe, or he maybe had some help with it, but we kind of got it started, and it's grown, and now it's a regional thing. And Bear Wise is what we use to educate people about bears in Tennessee or bears in your area, and how to coexist with bears, and that'll get us started, and then we'll branch out into what's going on in Gatlinburg.
So, a couple of years ago, we just saw the need that it's such a huge issue to deal with, educating the public about bears, and there's so many aspects of it. Here in Gatlinburg, we have a new group of people comes in every Friday afternoon. They leave on Monday, then the cycle starts over. So we're looking for some issues. Also, were consistency in messaging. Some other agencies would maybe have just a slightly different message that may be taken a different way. So we were concerned about people getting confused with messaging, and so we started working on this program. Then in the southeastern U.S., all the other states were struggling with the same thing. We were having
they've got bears too.
Yeah, they have bears, and the bears are expanding in those states, and we were having conversations about the same things. And CFWA has a group called the Large Carnivore Working Group, which I'm a member of, and that was one of the charges that we were given from our directors, is to come up with and take a look at some regional programs. So we decided let's take the Bear Wise thing that we're already discussing and make it a regional program, and it's gone live, and bearwise.org is where you can get the information. But if you go from looking at percent complete, we had a conversation the other day, myself and the other folks on the subcommittee, and I'd say most of us would say we're probably just about 50% where we want to be with this program and the website. We got a lot more stuff we want to do. We just hired a new webmaster to take over the initial website and start working on those other aspects that we've got on our to-do list, and they've started working on that, and they've got a lot of experience with bears and education. So we're looking forward to seeing what happens with this program over the next 12 to 18 months.
Well, there's a few or 6 or more criteria that we try to go by, that if you listen to these points, it'll help you be more bear wise. What are those points? And that'll get us into what kind of problems we might have here in Gatlinburg.
Yeah, and then the first part of the program, we are focusing around people's homes. There's lots of other aspects around businesses and also camping and things, but what we call the Bear Wise Basics is for the homeowner primarily. And the first thing is never to feed or approach bears, and that's pretty much a no-brainer, as we would say, but we do have issues of people hand-feeding bears, and it's a very dangerous thing to do for yourself, and you're pretty much signing a death warrant for that bear. So that's first and foremost, is never feed or approach the bears. And then the other issues are more associated with unintentional feeding. People don't realize initially what they're doing is attracting bears, and that may be bird feeders are a big one, especially this time of year. Birds can get enough calories out of a sunflower feeder. It'd take them more than a day to forage and get the same amount of calories. So they're very, very attracted to bird feeders, and they're going to come back, and they're going to keep coming until it's gone. Dog food and pet foods outside, where people are feeding large amounts and leaving The dog may not consume it all, or they're using automatic feeders. That's a big attractant. Then grills.
Right.
And smokers, that's not so much an issue, but sometimes we do run into that, and it's a big enough issue across the southeast that we included that. If you're living in an area that has a lot of bear activity, you need to clean those grills when you get done using them, empty that grease can, and you may even be best just to store it in a secure building or something like that. And then the sixth one is more about just educating your neighbors, and if you have bear activity, take the time to knock on your neighbor's door or call them and say, hey, saw a bear over here the other day, you may want to take precautions, and just kind of being proactive and letting other folks know what's going on. So,
Well, Matt, you posted a photo the other day, or a couple photos on Facebook of a bear that had gotten into a car.
Yes.
And tore it all to pieces. Tell us a little bit about that. And I don't know, David was probably involved in some of that, being out here in his area. But tell us about that. And David, let's talk about some of the stuff you've seen and dealt with with tourists here in Gatlinburg.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is a common occurrence in this area, according to David and his partners that work up here. Bears getting into vehicles is kind of the new fad for bears or something up here. But
wait till they start driving them, right? No.
Yeah, hey, we are in trouble. Dave says he's going to retire when he sees one driving a stick shift. But if you leave anything inside your vehicle that has the odor of food, it could be an empty fast food bag for that matter. Their noses are so incredible, they can smell it even through the glass. And they have learned how to jimmy these car doors to get them open. So windows down, obviously they're going to climb right through it. But even if you think, okay, I've closed the door, I'm good, you have to lock them because they can get inside your vehicle. And what usually happens is they get inside, the door shuts behind them, they get stuck in there, and they get scared. And they will tear a vehicle to pieces trying to get out of it. And sometimes you'll see videos of people walking up and opening the door and letting the bear out. Of course, that's a dangerous situation to put yourself in. So do us all a favor, do these officers a favor, do your insurance company a favor and yourself a favor, and keep your car doors locked and never leave food or anything that smells like food inside your car.
Now, David, I'm sure you've run into this many times with the bears in the cars, or bears in the trash cans around these hotels, or in somebody's backyard, or in their cabin even. So tell us what what folks can do when they're visiting Gatlinburg, what some of maybe the business owners could do to help alleviate bears getting in the trash and causing harm to people.
Well, just like Matt alluded to earlier, the biggest thing is with the vehicles is just keeping your doors locked.
Okay.
That is number one. That is probably one of the most frequent calls that we get here during the summertime is bear in a vehicle call. And they can, just like I said, just keep it locked. Don't leave food in the vehicle. With the businesses or the rental cabins, they tend to be garbage can issues. And these issues are not necessarily due to a bad garbage can. These garbage cans could be in very good working order. We don't have any bear-proof garbage cans. Bears can eventually figure out how to get into just about anything. But what we try to do is have them purchase bear-resistant containers, which they can take a little effort, but most of the time they don't want to extend that kind of effort when they go somewhere else to get an easy meal. So what happens is the people do not latch these containers back the way they need to be latched, whether it be a commercial dumpster like we have in these type buildings, or it is just a residential container. Gatlinburg does have an ordinance that they require the residents to have bear-resistant containers, and the businesses are required to have bear-resistant commercial dumpsters. And I've been here since 1997, and it's done almost a 180 since I first started.
Really?
That's good.
Just about all the containers here when I first came here in 1997 were open, and there was bears everywhere. And the number of bears until this year has been an exceptional year for bears in Gatlinburg, but it has really seemed to really worked having these measures put into the city.
Let me ask you a question about that. Have you seen an increase in bear calls outside the city limits? Because in the city they're doing pretty good, but they can go right outside the city limits and you don't have to lock your trash.
Right. You can be 15 yards outside the city limits and you're not required to have a bear-proof container.
Okay. Yeah.
So some of these bears that are coming into the city weren't habituated to this food by the city of Gatlinburg. They came from outside into the city, and we don't have any ordinances outside the city to have the bear-proof containers. But yes, to your question, we have had numerous calls outside the city of Gatlinburg this year, not just in just the very outskirts, but throughout the whole county. And from listening to the radio, it's been East Tennessee wide this year, we've had just a huge number of bears, whether it be from just a great bear production the last 2 or 3 years, or whether it's a food-related issue. I don't know, but we have had quite a few calls this year throughout the East Tennessee area.
And I don't want to get too far off topic on that, but people are worried about the fires, and they think the fire burned all the food. The bears are starving to death up here. That's why there's so many issues. And you explained that to me very well early this year. Can you tell me what you think is going on with that?
Well, what happened was we had a fire, what was it, 2 years ago now in the fall?
Almost.
And the successional growth of the new growth coming up now is producing lots of berries.
It's amazing how fire can make habitat better.
Fire's great for wildlife.
Right.
It's really good. So we've had a lot of berry production this year in and around Gatlinburg where these fires were, and it has drawn a lot of bears in from around the different parts of the park and different areas into this area to eat all this excess food that they've not normally had. Now, it's brought the bears in close to Gatlinburg. The berries have dried up, and now they've ventured on into Gatlinburg now. So we're getting an excess number of more bears this year than we've had before in the city.
Well, I was in a coffee shop the other day, and this lady said, we called you the other day. I had an agency shirt on, and I was like, well, you didn't call me. But no, she called the agency and said, I had a bear. It was in Knox County. So a bear had roamed into Knox County, and I'm sure we've got more than she knows about. But bears roam and go places. What makes them want to roam and move out and move out of their home range, per se?
Well, a lot of times it's the young males that are the ones that are moving out first.
Okay.
Usually after about 1 year, the females will kind of kick out the young males.
The mothers.
Yes,
Yeah.
the mothers. And they have to make their own way through.
Okay.
And they have to establish their own range. And a lot of times there is an adult bear within close proximity to where they are, so they just have to keep going that much further out to establish a home range.
Okay.
So we end up seeing bears further and further away from this general area here.
And we talked, I was talking to Dan earlier, we've seen some bears. We've had some bears in Humphreys County and Middle Tennessee area and even in Memphis at times, and those were probably coming from other states, we think.
Right. And, they'll move a great distance. And, back years ago when we first started using radio telemetry, and you'd have a bear just kind of disappear, and you would think your transmitter failed or something like that, and then 3 months later it shows back up. You're like, well, the transmitter must have started working. Well, now we have GPS on these transmitters, so no matter how far they go, you're going to get a reading. And there's a bear that was tagged in North Carolina in a project they're doing in Asheville, and they called one day and said, hey, one of our bears is in Unicoi County. And if you get a map out and look from Asheville to Unicoi County, it's not that far from a car, but just up and walk it in a couple of days is a pretty significant event. And the bear just got up and decided to go to Unicoi County, and he stayed up there for a few weeks, and he went back to Asheville. And then, a few months later, he got up and did it again.
Yeah.
So, and nobody really knows why they do that, but, they just get up one day and decide to go for a long walk and move around, and then they'll come back. But we are seeing range expansion or recolonization of bears into Middle and West Tennessee. The bear populations they're just taking over areas that they used to be years ago when we were first settled. And and they're not all coming out of the Smokies. Bears in Knox County, bears in Cumberland County, and areas like that are probably coming out of the Smokies area. But when you get into Memphis, southern Middle Tennessee, you're talking about bears that are coming up out of Mississippi or from Arkansas. Missouri has a healthy bear population. Kentucky has a healthy bear population. And all these bear populations are expanding and growing. So
it's a misconception. People think of them as a mountain animal, but they're not necessarily, right? They were across the
not
entire
necessarily.
United States.
Yeah, and when you think about the Cumberland Plateau and look at the elevation and how rough, when you get into Scott and Fentress and Cumberland County, that's some quality habitat from that respect. But then historically, the Mississippi River bottoms and how undeveloped they were, and just the huge trees and remoteness was a lot of bears utilized those areas. And we were talking earlier that in the 1920s, Davy Crockett was reportedly killed about 105 bears in 1 year in Obion County, which is about as far west as you get
up
in
near
Tennessee.
Reelfoot. Yeah.
And in Louisiana, virtually all of their bears are in hardwood bottoms and in the floodplains. In Mississippi, most of their bears are along the Mississippi River as well. So that kind of habitat is very alluring to bears where it still exists.
So can we plan to see bears further and further in Middle and West Tennessee as time goes by?
I think so. You're not going to see huge populations like we have in a lot of our counties, but you get into the fringes where where it's still a bit remote, and they can get into an area where they have opportunity to reproduce, and and that's the keys. When you start seeing people calling and saying, "Hey, I saw some cubs," that's the thing that really gets my radar going, is that they saw cubs. Because now we're talking about reproduction. We're not talking about what Dave was referring to as individual yearling male out looking around for a home range stuff. Now we're talking about females reproducing.
Right.
So we have a little thing on our website called "I Saw a Bear," where people that may see a bear can report it. And we encourage people, if you see a bear in Sevier County and want to get on there and report that, that's great, and we'll be glad to take it. But what we're really interested in is people who are seeing bears in Middle Tennessee or West Tennessee, wherever it may pop up.
Right.
In some areas, I had one lady talking to me about Tackett Creek, which is in Claiborne County, which is a pretty remote area. You don't get a lot of people, but she and her husband drive that on a regular basis, and she ID'd probably at least 5 individual bears there last summer.
Wow.
So that kind of information we're very interested in to help us as we move forward with determining where these bears are expanding, and let us know where we need to be doing some work to try to get some estimates.
Well, you mentioned the cubs, and we work closely with ABR. And what happens if we have to remove a cub or find a cub? We take those to ABR most of the time, right? They can help with those. Explain what ABR is and how that works and how we work with them. And then maybe we could get into the bear matrix before we run out of time.
Sure. Real quickly, ABR's been going for about 20 years now, I think, and close to it. And they were basically started as a need for when you have these orphan cubs, if the mother is killed by a car or some other issue, and you've got an orphan cub, there's really not much you can do with it. So ABR, they raise money to help pay for their facilities, and then if we have a cub that's orphaned, then we can't locate the mother. We'll usually wait at least 36 hours from the first sighting of a cub by itself to give the mother a chance to return. And that's obviously the best place for that animal to be, is with its mother.
Right.
And if we make the determination that she's not coming back, then we'll get it down to ABR, and they'll keep it till it's able to survive on its own. And then they also will take occasionally, if we have an injured yearling, they're permitted to take an injured yearling bear, but that's the only 2 situations that they'll are allowed to take them.
But they cannot take nuisance garbage bears,
No.
people think. Those
Right.
bear issue, David's going to pick it up, take it to ABR,
No.
and they're going to rehabilitate it. That doesn't happen.
And what people need to realize is that ABR will only take cubs pretty much 40 pounds or under. And there are a lot of people that see yearlings still with the mother, and these yearlings weigh 80, 90 pounds, and they're calling them cubs. Well, those aren't cubs. Those are yearlings. So there's a big distinction between a yearling and a cub. Just because they're with the mother still doesn't make them a cub.
Correct.
And I don't know if we say this, but ABR, Appalachian Bear Rescue, is what those stand for. But now, if say if we have a yearling or an older bear that's a nuisance bear that's getting into trash or become a problem bear, there's times where we have to put it down or relocate it, and there's a matrix that y'all go by. Just explain it a little bit. I know you can't get into depth on how that works, but there's times that you either put them down or you move them.
Well, I'll start here and let David jump in, because he's going to be the one that is more apt to make that decision. But we all work together to develop this matrix, and basically we're looking at 2 things when we get these calls on bears. We're looking at how they're acting towards people. Are they afraid of people? Are they running when they see them? Or they're indifferent? Or are they actually approaching people? And then we also look at the food that they're consuming and where this food is. So are they eating blueberries adjacent to a campground? Are they eating trash in the campground? Are they eating trash out of someone's backyard? Or are they getting in a vehicle or a tent and getting food? So, and you kind of have to vision it. You're talking about a row and a column, and you got these things. So you say, okay, the bear's doing this, and this is where he's acting towards people, and you come down to that box, and then it's got some options there. And options can range anywhere from giving the people technical assistance. It can be maybe some aversive conditioning with noises, things like that. Occasionally, we have trap and move, but we don't use that very much.
Okay.
Then we may have, even depredation permit issued if it's crop damage, and then just euthanasia. So And the moving thing is real tricky for us. And, we try not to, a lot of people have the idea, hey, if the bear's causing a problem, we'll just come get it and take it somewhere else. Well, there really is nowhere else to take it that we're not going to dump someone else's problem,
Just moving the problem
on another person.
Right.
I mean, the people in Greene County don't want the bears from Sevierville up here and vice versa. So, but if we find a bear, and jump in here, Dave, but if we have a situation where a bear has gotten into a bad situation and we've not had any reports of it, and it's just stumbled on, say, someone left their cooler out at a campground and the bear found it and got into it, then we might be able to get that individual animal moved before he become accustomed to coming in there and habituated to that food. He's not food conditioned yet. But once they become food conditioned, there's really nothing you can do. You move them, they're just going to cause somebody else a problem.
And normally when we get a call, a lot of it can be taken care of over the phone. Most of the time it's a garbage issue, a bird feeder issue, something of that nature. And you just have to explain to the individual, this is a people problem. This is not a bear problem.
Right.
You can fix this problem. Just put your garbage in the garage, take it out when the garbage truck comes, or you take it to the convenience center, whatever, put your bird feeders up. Sometimes it's not that easy. Example, we had a bear here in Gatlinburg that was a day active bear. That's also on the matrix, whether they're a day active bear or a night active bear.
Okay.
Bears are normally night active. You find a bear out at 3 o'clock in the day walking through downtown Gatlinburg, he's pretty habituated already at that point. But we had a bear that was on the 3rd floor of a hotel trying to enter rooms of a hotel. We can't leave that bear there because he's already used to people. A wild bear will run from you, an habituated bear will walk toward you. So it's pretty easy to tell which one's what.
Yeah.
So, and just like I said, it just determines the situation and whether it was aggressive. Aggressive to me, what happens to somebody out here may be really aggressive. To me, that's just the bear being a bear. So we really have to look at a whole lot of different things before we decide whether we're going to move that bear or just educate the person.
And we have to hear the saying, a fed bear is a dead bear. Explain that a little bit.
Well, and it is interesting. We put that on a sign a couple years ago, and at the time our assistant director said, I'm going to get some folks that do some hiking to look at that sign and tell me what they think, but they weren't from up this way. They were from Middle Tennessee. And the people really got hung up on that statement. And they were, well, why is it dead? Is the plastic in the bear killing it, or is it poison?
The garbage kills bears.
Yeah.
That's when they got hung up on.
And they were hung up on that garbage kills bears. Yeah, and fed bear is a dead bear type thing. And so they were so confused on that, we actually took it off the sign because we realized it wasn't doing what it was supposed to do.
Okay.
And so that's one of those that if you use that, you have to be a little bit more specific about what that means. And what it means is that if you're feeding the bear, if it's getting in garbage, it's going to eventually become food conditioned. And when it becomes food conditioned, it's going to rely almost 100% on human food, and it's going to be a nuisance. And you can't turn that around. And so the only option we're going to have on that bear is euthanasia, or it's just going to kill it because it's eating bad food, and it's literally the same things that happen to people. The teeth are rotting. There's been documented cases of diabetes in bears in Wisconsin because of chocolate, access to chocolate, and I won't go into all that. But
wow.
And there's some stuff that say, I can't remember the exact number, but there's some documented stuff out there about how much the lifespan is reduced of a bear that's eating human foods versus natural foods, and it's a significant reduction. So that's where the fed bear is a dead bear, is because you are impacting the lifespan of that bear in one way or the other by feeding it.
Well, we're going to run out of time, but real quick, I wanted to mention our website, tnwildlife.org. A lot of this information is there. You can pull up the website, click on the bear section, and all the information, phone numbers, that sort of thing. But if somebody wanted to call and report a bear, more likely call the Region 4 office, I guess, would be the best way to do that.
Yeah, and like I said, if it's a sighting, just put it on the bear. I saw a bear sighting on the website.
On the website,
and then, but I'd just like to add that, this stuff works. The stuff that David and I may have talked about, it works. We can give you case after case examples of where it works, but it becomes the people have to make a decision that they're going to change what they're doing around their homes, and then hopefully their neighbors will do the same thing, and then it grows. But it takes takes effort on our part. As Dave said, it's a people problem. It's not a bear problem. They're just looking for food.
Yeah, we're in their territory.
Right, and it's no different than recycling or something like that. You have to make a decision that you're going to be have a positive impact on those animals and do the thing that you need to do to cut down on those issues.
And I'll throw in there, it's not just a Gatlinburg Pigeon Forge Sevierville issue because the population is growing and they're expanding out into their former range like they've talked about. So wherever you're at, listening or watching, get ready for bears to be coming through your neighborhood. I live in White Pine. We had a bear come through my little town a couple months ago, and the people absolutely flipped out and called me, wanted me to come and get this bear. I said, no, do these things, don't do these things. The bear will move on, and guess what? The bear moved on.
Right.
So it works.
Yeah, and we tell people if the bear finds nothing to eat, they're not going to stay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what they're looking for is food. So, and if you see a bear and he's hanging around, the first thing I'm going to ask you if you call us is, what is he eating? What's this bear eating? And that's where the conversation is going to start. And you pretty much find out real quickly what it is.
Well, to get away from the problem or nuisance side of the bears, if somebody comes to Gatlinburg and they want to see a wild bear, where can they go?
Cades Cove.
Okay.
Cades Cove.
Wild bear.
A more wild bear.
Yeah, more wild.
Yeah.
They're all wild, but
Right.
less,
But yeah, I mean, they're liable to see one any time in Gatlinburg. They really are, at any place. But to see a bear in its natural habitat, the way that we envision seeing bears in the wild, you would need to go into the park, really.
Well, and speaking of natural habitat, we talked earlier about camping and hiking. A few tips on that real quick.
Well, you just want to make sure you're aware of what you're doing when you're out in the woods. If you're hiking or camping, and be aware that bears can be around. Store your food away from your tent. Don't set your tent up next to a blueberry bush or something like that. And just pack out what you take. And as I said earlier, your activities influence bear behavior. Good or bad, whatever you're doing, it's going to have an impact on bears.
So, all right, well, folks, that's going to wrap it up for today. I thank these guys for being with me.
Thank you.
Pretty cool to be here in Gatlinburg, and on location it is a rainy day, but that's all right. And take note of these things. Go back and watch the show again on Facebook. It'll be on YouTube, and just keep watching and learning. Go to our website, tnwildlife.org. That's the best place to go to find all the latest information on what we're doing as an agency, and we just want y'all to be bear wise. So we'll be seeing y'all next time. Thanks for tuning in, and this is your Tennessee WildCast.
Thanks for tuning in. Stay connected with TWRA by visiting our website at tnwildlife.org and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Hey, it's all about Tennessee wildlife. It's what we do. Tennessee WildCast will be on the air again next week. We'll see you then.